Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this rainy morning. I'm Laura Dolce. I'm the Executive Director here at the Kennebunk-Kennebunkport-Arundel Chamber of Commerce. I want to first welcome all our panelists and welcome everyone else who came. This is a really important topic, and we're hoping that this will be the first in a series on businesses and recovery. So to kick us off, I want to introduce Mark Lefebrve from the Pinetree Institute, who's going to introduce you to the rest of our panelists.
Thank you, Laura, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And it looks like from the graphic that I need to change my mugshot. Chief McKenzie, we're going to have to work on that. Nonetheless, welcome everybody. It is a kind of rainy day here on the seacoast in southern Maine. We have a very important topic, as Laura mentioned here. But before we get into it, my name is Mark Lefebrve. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Pinetree Institute. And in that role, I help build community coalitions to address the gaps in services and barriers and so forth as it relates to substance use disorder. And I've had the pleasure to work with many of you on the call here today and look forward to continuing to develop relationships throughout the region. Today, you can expect to hear about recovery-friendly workplaces from 3 different perspectives. We have Paige, CEO and President of Kennebunk Savings Bank, and one of the early pioneers, certainly in Maine, and I would dare say across the region as it relates to embracing the principles and the benefits of recovery-friendly workplaces. We have Colby Bracy from Nonantum, and she'll be helping us understand what it's like to be in the early stages, informally or formally, of hiring and staffing people, but doing so perhaps without the benefit of having the services and the trainings and so forth that are available to recovery-friendly workplaces. And then last but certainly not least, we've got Brittany from Maine Association of Recovery Residences, a person in long-term recovery, and somebody who has a very compelling story about what it's like to look for work and rebuild one's sense of pride and belonging in the community. So there's 3 very complementary perspectives that we'll be talking about here today. We will have a Q&A at the end, and what we'll do here is, I guess we're going to go in the order of Brad, Colby, and then Brittany, and they'll share for about maybe 15 minutes about their experiences, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, perhaps put it in the chat. And with that, Brad, I think I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Just set up here. There we go. So would a banker be without a PowerPoint? So just wanted to, so today what I want to talk about is kind of Kennebunk Savings journey on becoming a recovery-friendly workplace, certified recovery-friendly workplace in New Hampshire, and all of our other activity, not all of them, but a good portion of our activities around recovery. And hopefully just some of the examples that I'm giving are things that other businesses can use maybe as an inspiration or as a roadmap for how they'd like to move forward in supporting recovery. So at Kennebunk Savings, with everything we do, we believe we all have a role to play, and recovery is certainly one of those areas. And here's what we're doing. So to understand where we come from, I think it's important that you understand where we come from as to how we arrived at supporting recovery. So many of you already know us probably, but we're established in 1871. We're a mutual bank. That's really important. We don't have share stockholders. We were literally formed for the benefit of our communities back in 1871, and there is no individuals with ownership in the bank. It's literally owned by the depositors and the communities. You can see our statistics there. We have 17 branches. Importantly, we have about 340 employees. As you can imagine, all of them, not all of them, but most of them have probably been affected by substance misuse, either directly in their family, extended family, or in friends, or certainly at the very least by their communities. So just to briefly talk about our Community Promise program, which is really the basis for how we approach recovery-friendly workplace. It started back in 1994. Again, I said we don't have stockholders or individuals, so we literally view our community members as the stockholders of the institution.
Brad,
when we start, yep.
I'm so sorry. We're not seeing your screen.
You're not.
We're not.
All right, let's hold on just a second. Lost my mouse. I'm that guy on the Zoom meeting. This is great.
And I will swear to everyone that we tested this and it worked perfectly 10 minutes ago, I swear.
It does, right? How's that?
Yeah,
There we go.
there you are.
All right, perfect. So, okay, just quickly again, our community investment program founded in '94. We don't have individual stockholders, so our community members are our stockholders. Back in 1994, when we started it, the extent of the program was our 10% commitment. So basically, we give 10% of our after-tax net profits every single year back to our communities. Back in 1994, that totaled about $26,000. Today, with the growth of the institution, in 2022, that's over $1.8 million that we're giving back, and $17.5 million since the inception of the program. You can see part of that funding, which I'll talk about in a moment, was in support of recovery. And here we have the donation that we made to Maine Works, or to the Maine Recovery Fund, in support of Maine Works to buy the Prius that they have for transportation for their clients to get to work sites. And I know a lot of people are familiar with Margot and the Maine Works program. So basically, we've evolved over those 28 years, whereas in the beginning, we simply viewed philanthropy as, you know, when we looked at philanthropy, we just looked at dollars. So at that point in time, what we wanted to do was leverage, or what we've grown to do over time is leverage all of our assets and resources, not just our profits. So that includes the passion of our employees, our ability to be a convener, our platforms, our distribution network, and also our position as an employer. So all of those have become really important with our program. But really what we've started to do is we've started to utilize all of those resources in support of recovery, prevention and recovery, and becoming a recovery-friendly workplace. So leveraging our profits, that's the easy piece of it, right? I just talked a little bit about one of the donations that we made, but we've started the Spotlight Fund a few years ago, where we took a portion of that $1.8 million that we're giving away in 2022, and we've wanted to go out and proactively identify causes in our communities that were really important in having an impact in our community. So we've got 3 cornerstones to that program. One's food insecurity, one's early childhood education, but you can't have a favorite child, right, or son or a daughter. However, for us, I can safely say we do. It's substance use disorder prevention and recovery. And since 2018, we've given over $400,000 to prevention and recovery programs and resources in our communities. So this is just a quick highlight. So that's some of the organizations that we've given to around prevention and recovery. So that's one part of our contribution or our efforts around recovery. But we always, around here, we talk a lot about money's great as long as it's combined with action. And all the other dots that I used on that scale just a minute ago, I want to show you how we're utilizing each of those in recovery. The first one is leveraging the passion of our employees. So one of the things we've done around recovery is we do a lot of storytelling around the bank. We create a lot of videos on a number of different subjects, and they all feature our different employees telling their stories. We've used that with recovery, prevention and recovery as well, recovery-friendly workplaces. This is Jen Brimogen. If you don't know her, I'm not going to play the video, but she and a couple of others recorded videos around how recovery and substance misuse has affected either direct family members or friends or the employees themselves. These are probably 2 or 3 minute videos, sometimes 4 or 5 minute videos. They reside on our intranet at the bank, and anybody can access them at any time that they want. They go into a library, but initially, obviously, we bring them front and center on the intranet. And it's really, really important that all of the employees that are working here, so again, we have about 340 employees. We want them to hear that there's other employees working here that may be in similar situations to them. And the employees like Jennifer, who are kind of stepping out a little bit and telling their story, then becomes to some degree a magnet or a resource for someone else here who may be going through a similar situation. And if they're not contacted directly, they're at least pointing, someone like Jennifer is pointing them to the resources that are available through the bank and out in the community around substance misuse. Part 2, leveraging our ability to be a convener. So this was actually now, it was pre-COVID, but it was back in 2019 when we really started our work on prevention and recovery. We put together, we took our ability to be a convener, which for me just means we've got a lot of connections out in the community. We're a big commercial lender. We've got a lot of retail or consumer customers out there, and we deal with a lot of different community organizations. Because we have all of those contacts, we have the ability to bring them together on different subjects. So again, back in 2019, we did this forum over at Vinegar Hill in Arundel and brought together, as you can see, I'm sure a lot of you know a lot of the people standing up there, a lot of subject matter experts to talk to our businesses who we invited, and actually we opened it up to the whole community to attend in order to understand how addiction and substance misuse was affecting their workplace and some strategies that they could use and some resources that they would have at their fingertips in order to be able to most effectively deal with their employees and their employees' families and things that were going on. So in addition to just being able to put on a forum like this, simply making those connections that I was talking about. You know, we give, because of our Community Promise program, we give to over 300 organizations, nonprofit organizations in a given year. So we know a lot of those people and we're able to bring them together. And we've got one organization that's working on a program that may not be aware that another organization is working on it. We can help bring that together. So again, this is one of our assets and resources that we're able to tap in terms of being a convener that can help a lot of different things and is incredibly helpful around recovery. Platforms. So when I think about platforms, I think about, so how can we stand up and talk about recovery to everybody, to the community, not only to our employees and their families, but to the greater communities, to the nonprofit organizations, to the businesses in our communities. So, you know, I think every organization, every company has platforms, and they have probably excess capacity on those platforms. So the most obvious one for us, you know, is social media. So what we've used is we use Facebook and we use Instagram to help nonprofits in our communities, and particularly around recovery. So we put up a series, we regularly repeat this on recovery issues. So we talk about things like stigma, what recovery is. We talk about ACEs. We try to educate around ACEs. And again, social determinants of behavior, and another stigma post that we did. But the more that we can get these concepts out, the transparency, the more we can get people talking about them. If we can use this excess capacity in our platforms, why wouldn't we do it? And again, leveraging assets and resources. Every business has a different set of assets and resources that they can leverage. You just have to think about how you can use them and how you want to use them. Distribution network. So we're a bank, we've got 17 branch offices, and we have a pretty significant, pretty good sizable operations center. So we're thinking, how can we use that distribution network in terms of recovery? So we know we can use it to get the message out. We just talked about that a little bit. But we literally came up with what we thought was just a really good, it's a really good solution for us. And most importantly, I think when you're talking about all these things, at the end of the day, once in a while, you need something tangible. You need something that you can literally hold in your hand as a reminder or as assistance to something like recovery. We found that in doTERRA bags. If you're not familiar with doTERRA bags, they're drug deactivation bags. So for all the extra prescriptions and drugs that someone may have in their medicine cabinet at home, it provides for easy disposal and deactivation of the active ingredients in those drugs. You simply, you simply tear off the top of the bag, you open it up, you add water, you add the extra pills that you've got, seal it up, shake it, and it can be disposed of in the household trash. These doTERRA bags, the cost on these are around $5 or $6. We made the decision, as you can see, back in 2019, to offer these free of charge to our customers and the general public. And we've utilized our branch network as that distribution network. So if you go into any Kennebunk Savings branch, you will see a display right in the lobby, usually right up on the teller line or on the pods that we use for our customer service assistants. And you can come in, grab a doTERRA bag or two, and take it free of charge. Again, utilizing capacity that we have in our branches and resources that we have available to us. And then bringing it home. So we bring it home through the videos with our employees, but we are an employer. So how can we bring the idea of recovery home here? The way we did that was through New Hampshire Governor's Recovery Friendly Workplace Initiative. We became a certified recovery friendly workplace back in 2020. And what does that mean, becoming a recovery-friendly workplace? So I think that's some of what we're going to be talking about today, maybe a little bit more. Really important, I think, that a program like this happens in the state of Maine. New Hampshire's got a great program that they use. And I think probably one of the best parts about this is it's not hard. There's a framework that's been developed that any business can pick up and run with. And there's resources made available to you through staff at recovery centers, and other staff through the Recovery Friendly Workplace program to act as resources. So for us, the way we define Recovery Friendly Workplace is it really comes down to three areas: policy, education, and resources. So basically, it's looking at all of your policies to make sure that they appropriately address recovery in the workplace. Obviously, the most obvious one to think about is HR policies. So whether it's leave policies or sick policies or short-term disability, or, it's amazing how many places we've got a pretty large HR policies. I'm sure a lot of businesses do. There's so many places in there that really need to take into account individuals who may be in recovery and supporting those individuals through recovery. So make sure as a business, you're going through all of your policies to ensure that they support what you're trying to do in supporting the recovery community. Education, obviously incredibly important. It's creating that workplace awareness. I talked about the videos. We do lunch and learns, and we provide a lot of other forums at the bank to talk about recovery, prevention and recovery, and substance misuse. We do things like a little poster here that we've done on reducing stigma. This is just one of the reducing stigma reduction programs that we've done at the bank. But we'll do this on the intranet. We'll have it up around the bank. We'll talk about it at officers' meetings. We'll talk about it in staff meetings, things like that. Again, getting that awareness and transparency and reducing the stigma. And then just understanding, supporting, and celebrating recovery. We obviously have a number of employees here who are in recovery. And the more activities that we can get to engage them, many of them, they want to tell their story. They're very open about where they are in their recovery process, and they're willing to share it with everybody else. And the way to create that understanding and support is to hear those firsthand stories. Resources. That's the most important. One of the most important parts is facilitating resources. We don't have to be recovery coaches here at the bank, but we want to be able to provide employees with access to those resources. You know, it's something as simple as this poster that we put together. It's got, you can sort of see on there, it's kind of hard to see, but it's got contact information for the Portland Recovery Community Center. We're in New Hampshire, so it's also got the SOS Recovery Community Organization in Dover. It's got other organizations on here, Family Resorts, Restored, Safe Harbor Recovery, the Triangle Club down in New Hampshire, and then bigger resources like 211 and 988 that are available. These posters are throughout. I'm standing in the operations center, which is why I'm doing this. So they're throughout our operations center. They're in the employee portion of our branches. You'll find them up on walls. You'll find them on community boards. You will find them in the bathrooms on the back of stalls. So a quick, easy way, and maybe it's the prompt that someone needs to be able to start thinking about maybe I'll reach out, maybe this is an easy way to do it. I can tell you that we have specific instances of I've talked to employees who actually use these posters for themselves here. And it was kind of the one thing that really finally tipped them over the edge to get them to reach out and start their recovery journey. Much like a lot of other organizations, we also have an employee assistance program, an EAP program available. So there's resources available there as well. And as I just said, constant visible reminders around the workplace. So what are the next steps for us? So for us, it's staying involved, staying active, and keep learning. So we engage in, or are going to be engaging in recovery-friendly job fairs. There's also job boards out there for the recovery community. We try to keep everything fresh, current, and in front of our employees. So I've talked a little bit about that in terms of the videos and the posters and things like that. What's really important is that you don't stick a poster up and then leave it there for 3 years, because it becomes part of the woodwork, basically part of the wall, right? So whatever you're doing, you've got to keep it fresh every so many months, whatever you want to set it up, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, even if you're just changing colors and things like that, something to draw attention to the resources, getting fresh new resources in front of people. Again, we have an intranet, so we use that as our primary communication on a day-to-day basis around here. Getting more stuff up on the intranet. As I said, individual meetings, department meetings, we have branch meetings, we have all kinds of meetings. We have officers meetings, senior management meetings. All those meetings at some point during the year, multiple times, need to have some element of talking about being a recovery-friendly workplace and recovery journey and resources that are available. Liz Torrance, who's not able to be here today, she's my subject matter expert. She's our social responsibility and community relations manager. She and I attend conferences and seminars and try to do as many panels as we can and remain active participants and, more importantly, learners in the recovery conversation. So that's really important to us as an organization. And then Liz and I will talk to anybody who wants to listen to our story and how we've done it. It's not hard. Probably the hardest part is just making the decision that you're going to take the step to be supporters of recovery. For us, that wasn't a really difficult decision. It was really, really easy. And I don't know why any other business would not want to do it. So we'll talk to anybody about what we've done. We'll share our materials. We'll share everything we've done. And we love to share back from other recovery-friendly workplaces to see what's making a difference in there and been successful in their areas. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, advocating for establishment of a statewide RFW program in Maine. I'm a firm believer that at the end of the day, there needs to effectively be an accreditation process around recovery-friendly workplace, which again, there's a framework set up in New Hampshire. We need to have something statewide. It can't be broken up all into different areas. It can't be 100 companies trying to do 100 different things. There's got to be a framework for this to make it easy to do. And easy that doesn't mean bad, or it doesn't mean that you're not committed to it. It's getting that framework up and running, and you can just expand on it and grow on it, but get people in the door to wanting to become a recovery-friendly workplace. And then again, just keep leveraging all of our assets and resources, which is what we're trying to do. So again, you know, a lot of places will show up with, you know, banks and others will show up with just a check, and they donate the money and they leave and you don't hear from them again. When we take on something, which I hope other businesses will, particularly in the instance of recovery, is that it can't just be about writing a check. You've got to gain knowledge in the workplace with key leadership. It's got to come from the top. My board of directors is 100% supportive of the recovery work that we're doing here. My senior management team is all in on this. You need that leadership and example from the top of the organization, or it's never going to go anywhere. And that top of the organization, guess what? They're the ones who actually have the ability to tap the resources that are necessary from the company and make it a priority. So you absolutely have to have leadership from the top levels of the organization to do this. So at the end of the day, you know, recovery is a social responsibility. And for Kennebunk Savings, our bottom line is that social responsibility is a corporate responsibility. If anyone ever wants to get in touch, like I said, Liz and I will talk to absolutely anybody. You can email us, you can call us at the bank, and we'll get back to you. And Liz or I or both of us be happy to talk to anybody about the recovery-friendly workplace solutions. Now I'll try to stop sharing.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
And thank you for a shining example of how Kennebunk Savings Bank is leaning into recovery-friendly workplace and all of the various elements around that. We're going to now, I'm going to introduce Colby Bracy. Colby is the Director of Human Resources and Philanthropy at the Nonantum Resort. And this is a shining example of a company who's leaning into reentry and helping to give individuals with substance use disorder and or criminal backgrounds a second chance. So with that, Colby, I'll introduce it to you.
Great, thank you. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'll just speak to you. So like Mark said, we actually sort of fell into recovery-friendly workplace by accident, by way of by reentry from prison. So I really have been interested in the justice system for a long time and how incarceration impacts people and communities. And so a few years ago, I decided to see what it would look like to hire individuals who are leaving incarceration and give them that hand up that they need as they reintegrate into life outside. But then the pandemic happened and that kind of went wayward. But this year we were able to get the program started. And it's really just amazing that the Nonantum let me do this because it is kind of a scary thing to start, but I'm really thankful to have such a supportive employer. So anyway, the goal of this really was to give people a sense of dignity as they were leaving a place where all of their dignity had been stripped of them. And I wanted to see them to see this job as a place that they could start over and they could just be whoever they wanted to be, because nobody would know that they'd been convicted of a felony. You know, we don't share that information with our other employees. So, you know, they're just a person starting a new job. And so on top of that, I wanted to be sure that we could offer them a support system, and the Nonantum is really lucky to have tons and tons of supportive and caring people on our staff. And so when somebody is navigating something difficult, it's really critical to have somebody on their management team that they can come to and just let them know, hey, I need help with something. So we've gotten that set up as well. But what I've learned through doing this post-incarceration program is that very frequently the people who are leaving incarceration also are in recovery. So that got me thinking, okay, so how can we serve more people in our community, people who are in recovery but maybe haven't been recently incarcerated, but are struggling to find meaningful employment? And so the answer is the same thing, which is to hire them. But I don't want anybody who's interested in this to think that you have to hire somebody just because they used to use drugs. So I'll walk you through my process, which is the same as hiring anybody else. So all of my candidates, whether I'm interviewing them in prison or if they're a student at the high school or anybody in between, they go through the same exact interview process with me. I ask all the same types of questions and gauge how well I feel like they'd be able to perform the job that they're interested in, what their communication skills are like, if their pay expectations match what we're offering. And then only if somebody is the right fit, I'll make them an offer. And that's really it. Everybody's treated exactly the same, regardless of what their past looks like. And in my opinion, that's really step one of becoming a recovery-friendly workplace, is just to treat everybody as a whole person, and not to treat anybody differently because of what their past might look like. And so once they're hired, the next step really is to make them feel comfortable and aware of the resources that are available through the Nonantum. And so I tell everybody from this population on their first day, nobody knows their story. It's 100% up to them how much of themselves they'd like to share with their coworkers. And I really think it just puts people at ease to know that when they're walking through the door on their first day, it's kind of scary, but people aren't going to be looking at them and say, oh, that's the criminal, or gossiping about them or anything like that. It's a safe place to come to work hard, and just become whoever you want to be. But I will say several of our employees have shared their story with other coworkers, and nobody judges them for it. People are really supportive. If somebody has a court date or something like that, everybody is rooting for them. So that has been a really pleasant surprise, that, you know, people don't care. They're really happy to just support their coworkers in whatever it is that they're going through. And so we have set up a system that we have frequent check-ins with all of our employees from this population to make sure that they're staying on track with their sobriety, check on their mental health, see how they're liking the job, really just to connect. And I think that every touch point at work should, regardless of whether somebody's in recovery, should make them feel like they're an important member of the team. And so we really focus on that, just really taking people into our fold, and making sure that they feel included and like they belong. And so after they're hired, they get started, we'll share our resources and our policies. So in our case, we do offer a stipend for BetterHelp online counseling to all of our employees. And so if people would like to see a counselor, but maybe don't have time to do it in person, they can use BetterHelp online on their own time. They also have online messaging. They can just text with their therapist whenever they'd like to. And so that's been a great tool for busy people, especially if somebody doesn't have insurance that would cover mental health services. So that's been great. But if somebody needs more help, either with mental health or with substance use, they can come to me and I'll point them in the right direction, which for me is emailing Mark, and then he'll help me. But so that's been great. I have had to do that before. But I like everybody to know that they can come to me, and I'll keep everything confidential and just help them as best I can. So if there are any employers considering doing this, I really would urge you to have one designated person who sort of manages this program and can point people in the right direction and really help them through what they're going through. And we're also totally open to holding a job for somebody while they get better. If somebody needs to go get help for a month or 90 days or whatever it is, we let them know that we'll still be here when they get back and they're ready to come to work. And I really think that's important because as long as their actions didn't hurt our business or anybody that works for us or our guests or anything like that, there's really no reason that we would force somebody to start over and have to start their job search all over again. Take away their job. We're here for them whenever they're ready to come back. And so, like Mark said, we've been doing this informally. So there have definitely been challenges, but we've learned a lot. Every pitfall really has been a learning opportunity. But I think the biggest thing that we've learned is that people in recovery need support outside of us. So we've had a lot of success hiring people who are living in sober living homes because they're held accountable both at work and at home. So that's been a really nice tool for us to use. We've done our best to support all of our employees that are in recovery, but the fact is we really don't have all of the knowledge or resources yet to do that successfully. So I'll be honest, there have been people who have relapsed, but I really truly believe that relapse is part of recovery. So I don't see it as a failure. It's just somebody who wasn't ready yet. And it doesn't scare us away from trying again. And if that person gets better, we're still here. They can have their job back. But I don't think that fearing relapse can prevent you from doing the right thing, which is to hire people who need a job. But I'll share a couple wins as well. So number one is one of our employees that we hired out of incarceration moved into a sober living house and ended up recruiting 3 other people that they met either in prison or at their sober house to come work for us. And so I thought this was great because the initial employees saw that we're a safe place to work and knew that these other 3 people would thrive with us. And so now the original employee has 3 referral bonuses that she's been paid. And the other 3 employees have found employment that they can enjoy in a place that they feel like they belong. And hopefully they'll spread the word to their friends as well. You know, we always say that we hire nice people and nice people have nice friends. And so we really rely on a referral system to get really solid employees. So I think this is a great way to do that. And then number 2 is earlier this week, it came through my email that one of our formerly incarcerated employees posted on Facebook, just a picture of the river off of our back lawn. And it said, "I never thought I would say I have a job I love. I can't believe I get paid to be here. Life is so much better." And I really appreciated seeing that because it emphasized the impact that we can have on other people by treating them as humans and doing something as simple as hiring them despite what they've been through or what they've done. And so that's been our experience so far. It's been really successful and impactful, not just for our new hires. At our last quarterly management meeting, there were several managers that shared the ways in which their families have been disrupted by substance use, and many expressed gratitude that we've made the decision to give people a chance because it really can be the catalyst to getting better and living a full life. And I also think that by making ourselves a safe workplace for people who are in recovery has also made us become a safe workplace for people who are struggling in other ways, or maybe just have a hard time finding employment due to their circumstance, whether it's because they are a person with a disability or somebody who has mental health struggles, or maybe even just a single parent who needs their employer to understand that they need some flexibility with scheduling. We are that place where we're safe and we'll work with you to make your job work for your life. So our next step is underway, which is becoming a designated recovery-friendly workplace, which will involve lots of training for our staff, which I'm really excited about because I think that it will really help this program blossom and help other people to understand on a deeper level what it is we're doing. I really think that knowledge is power when it comes to this stuff. I know in my experience, every time I do something like this and hear other people's lived experience, it really just humanizes the process for me. You understand that everybody in recovery at their core is a person. So it really just kind of brings you back down to earth and makes you realize that everybody needs an opportunity. And so that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions about this process either here, or if anyone wants to meet up to talk, email me, call me, whatever. I'm really so happy to answer any questions that you might have about getting started.
Sorry about that. Colby, could you please post your email in the chat, please, for those that may not have it?
Yes,
and thank you. Just a wonderful example of people-centric employment, creating a welcoming environment, a friendly environment for people who are looking to get back on their feet, but also equally as important, the importance of wraparound services such as housing and transportation and so forth that need to be addressed. So thank you so much for your share. And with that, I'm going to introduce our third and final speaker of the day, panelist of the day, with Brittany Reichmann. She's a lifelong Maine resident, a person in long-term recovery, and she works today at the Maine Association of Recovery Residences. So Brittany, if you could take it away.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks for asking me to be here. Things like this have slowly crept in as like my top favorite thing about my job, even though they're not necessarily work related. I get to make connections, and I think I have become increasingly passionate about doing this stuff because the more that we increase awareness and the more we increase awareness, the more we decrease stigma. And I think that that is so important, especially when it comes to employment, which is what we're here to talk about. So I'll try to keep it focused on that as much as possible. A little background though, as Mark said, I am a lifelong Maine resident. I was born and raised in Windham, Maine, and I actually currently live back there now, which I never thought in a million years would happen, but I do with my family, so it's kind of cool. I was a straight A student my entire life, in honors, AP classes, involved in student council, and all of the things that I could possibly get involved in. I was an avid soccer player. I played pretty much year round, 7 days a week, my poor parents, for years. I was not somebody that anybody thought would eventually struggle with substance use. And during my high school, when I started high school, about my freshman year, we were always hanging out with the older kids, the seniors. We were always drinking, and that's really where it started for me. I was very quickly more preoccupied with alcohol, being involved in any sort of event or celebration than all of my friends were. I was willing to drink before the school dance, even though I could get suspended. I was willing to drink before soccer games and all of those different things. And I was always taking it a little bit further than everybody else. And my senior year of high school, I was introduced to opioids actually through the medicine cabinet in my own home, to no one's fault. They had been there for a very long time for a chronic injury and pain. And well, actually, I had been introduced my sophomore year when I had my wisdom teeth out, and I abused that prescription because for me, it was like hook, line, and sinker. The second I took my first opioid, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I want to feel like this forever. And, at that time, that prescription ran out, and it just I moved on. But when I found out that there were several opioids in my home, I was very excited to hear this news, and I quickly set off to what became a decade-long addiction to opiates. So that started when I was 17, and by the age of 23, I was an IV heroin user. I had been to prison, I had been to jail, and I was facing 2 felony charges out of Massachusetts for trafficking drugs. And it was during that time that I started to realize that these choices that I'd made, this addiction that I was dealing with, it was going to impact me long-term now for the rest of my life. And it will. And I've come to a place of acceptance, and these types of events make me so excited because it means for other people like me checking the box for the rest of their lives, maybe that will go away someday, but it doesn't matter so much. And I love that because to me, that sort of felt like not a death sentence, but like I went to college, and I struggled through that. And here I am, now I'm a convicted felon, and what does the rest of my life look like? So at that time, I was stipulated to complete treatment. I went to, I think like my fifth long-term treatment, and I came home. And that was in 2015. And my dad's stipulations on me coming home were, you have to get a job. And I was like, oh, this should be fun. So I had some friends in recovery, and they all worked at the same place. And I wouldn't exactly say it was a recovery-friendly workplace as far as like HR policies or anything like that, but it was really well known that they hired people with backgrounds. They hired people in recovery. There was tons of people in the Portland sober living homes that worked there, and they didn't ask me like a second time about my record, about anything. They looked at my employment history and they asked some questions, and they understood, and they hired me. And I was so happy to just have a job. And it felt like such a huge step because I was so convinced that it would be like, I don't want to sound any type of way, but that like I would be having to work at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or something like that, which I'm not saying anything bad about those jobs, but for me, that's what it seemed like. And that was a huge step for me. And that employer. So I worked there through 2 recurrences of use, actually. And the second one, it was like the first one I went away and I went to treatment, and they did not hire me back for a few months to see like how things would go. And then once I was still doing well, they did hire me back. And the second time, I think that this is one of my favorite recovery stories, because it truly was my employer changed the entire trajectory of my life. I was really struggling. I needed help. I tried to stop on my own again. I couldn't do it. My parents, my family had supported me at so many treatment centers that they were just like, of course we want you to get help, but we can't pay for you to go again. And I was really left to my own devices. Like I had to figure it out. And I had worked my way up, and I happened to sit right outside of the owner of the company's office, and we developed like a friendly relationship. And I was like, you know what? I have no other options. I'm going to talk to him. So I went in there that day and I sat down and I said, I'm really struggling. I need help. Here's what I have saved for money. Here's what this place costs to go. I was wondering if we could work out some sort of loan. And he said, what do you need? I'll get HR in here right now. She'll write you a check, and do not come back here until you're ready. And so I left that day and I went to treatment the next day. And I got the help that I needed, and I went to sober living again, and I came back to work probably like 60 days later. And I continued to pay that loan back for 2 years out of every single paycheck. And I had this support, and everyone knew what had happened, which, like, because I had shared, he didn't share it. I was totally open about it, but I had this extra support at work, like you said, Colby, and at home, and everyone kind of like was on the same page. So what that looked like is, like probably a year later, I was struggling with undiagnosed anemia, and I looked pretty ill, like black bags under my eyes. I was so tired all the time. And he like took me aside. He brought me into his office, and he's like, are you okay? Like, are you struggling? Like, what's going on? So I always had this layer of support at my workplace, which was incredible. I got to travel. They trusted me. I traveled to Europe several times in my last year there. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I enjoyed the work, but I enjoyed the opportunity to become a reliable employee. And I enjoyed the cushion of people knowing what I was going through. And I started to see it was actually really cool. I think I called out one time in over 3 years because I had an infected tooth and I needed a root canal that day. And like, for that whole time, I had just become such a reliable employee. I learned things about professionalism and, emailing with email etiquette, like all of these different things. And it was such an opportunity that had this place not been supportive of recovery, I would have never had. I'm just gonna check the time. Oh, I'm running close. So fast forward. And I was ready to move on, and this job became available at Maine Association of Recovery Residences. And to me, a recovery residence was a game changer for me. I could go to treatment, that was fine. I did it a million times, but I couldn't do like real life things like show up to work and pay bills and develop relationships and all of those different things. So when this job became available, I quickly applied because I'm so passionate about it. And I've been here for 3 years. I started out as the assistant program manager. Now I'm the program manager. And it's really, again, I'm going to end because I want to leave time for questions, but thank you again. This is one of the best parts of my job. So I appreciate you all having me here. It's always so encouraging. Colby, actually, some women from the Nonantum came up at another event. We're like, can we connect with your houses? And I was like, of course you can, like here's the info. That's amazing. We always encourage our residences to reach out to local employers and develop relationships so that residents can find stable, meaningful employment. With that, I'll just end so there's time for questions.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
Sure.
And thank you, Colby, and thank you, Brad. So Laura, I don't know what the format is here, but I'm just going to open it up for Q&A, and we'll take questions for as long as they come in, even if we run a little bit over.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
So we could either have questions that come in through the chat, or if somebody wants to either raise their digital hand or just chime in. It's all good.
Mark, maybe to start it off, I have a quick question, and it could be for anyone, honestly, here. I appreciated hearing Brad talk again about how they started and kind of all of where they came from on their road to becoming a recovery-friendly workplace. I know a lot of our local businesses are teeny tiny. You know, we've talked about it here at the Chamber, wanting to go down that road. There's 3 of us. I wondered if all of you could give some advice to small companies that still want to do this, but you know, some of the inns or some of the other smaller places just might not have that scope or that breadth of professionalism, whether it comes from an HR department or even sort of a complete employee handbook. Where do you begin?
I think so. I guess panels like this, and I think getting contacts, I think it's completely scalable. I don't think it matters the size of the workplace that you have. So a 3-person business may not have, certainly doesn't have the volume of policies that we have, but there are definitely practices that they can adopt, and you know, just get educated on it, I guess, is the easiest way. And you can almost become your own recovery-friendly workplace through practices and knowledge and things like that. So I don't think the size of the business should preclude anyone from being supportive of the recovery community and of their employees.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really think it's more the environment that you foster. So if you have this inclusive type of workplace, I think that's a really great start. And to just be understanding of people if they need help with anything, really. I know I've seen so many workplaces that, you know, somebody makes a mistake and it's like the end of the world and they get yelled at and all that kind of stuff. I think that's not the environment that we need to be fostering for any type of person. So I think just having that understanding environment, you don't need any sort of like extra money or anything to do this type of thing. We really haven't spent any money to hire these folks, and it's been great.
I think, you know, some of the things Brittany, I think, was alluding to, and just some instances that we've had here, you know, we've completely changed and we've totally transformed in the last 5 years as to how we approach someone who is dealing with substance misuse in the workplace. And, you know, when there is an incident here, you know, I mean, just if you completely simplify it, 5 plus years ago, if there was an incident here with someone, let's say someone struggling with alcohol, and it starts affecting the workplace. 5 years ago, we would have had them into HR, we would have fired them and they would have been out the door. Today, it's a completely different conversation around it. And it's more focused on, you know, obviously, and I think Colby sort of alluded to it, you know, obviously there's certain behaviors that you can't tolerate in the workplace. So you've got to bring that forward. But the conversation today is a little bit of that and a lot of bit of how can we help? Here's the resources that we have available. If you're ready to enter into recovery, if you're ready to maybe start reaching out and exploring help, try these resources. You know, between Liz and I, we know a lot of individuals in the recovery community and in the recovery centers and things like that. We've actually matched up people with people that we know in the recovery centers just to try to get them off and get them on that start. So I think that's really important as well.
I'd also like to add, you also don't need to be a really formal business to do this either. Like I like doing this kind of stuff with Brad because Kennebunk Savings obviously, you know, has a very formal structure. It's a bank. The Nonantum, we are super homemade. Like everything is just kind of informal. Small business runs a lot different than a corporate type of business. And so I just want to express that any size, any type of structure can really make this happen. You don't have to have this robust HR program and a long handbook and everything like that. Like if you're just kind of a mom and pop shop and run by the seat of your pants, that's fine. You can still do this.
And you don't have to be I keep talking, but you don't have to be an expert in recovery either. You need to know how to get, what you do need to know is how to get people to the right places and to the right people that can help them. You don't have to be a recovery coach. You don't have to have a recovery coach on your staff. You just need to have someone who can get people to the right places. That's the most important part. And like Colby said, you don't need a bunch of policies to do that. You just need to know how to do that and recognize the situation and get people to the resources.
I got a question that came in through chat. Where would an organization start if they are interested in getting involved, finding resources, etc.? Are there organizations that can help businesses get started? Yeah, great question. We are on the precipice of developing a Maine driven and recovery-friendly workplace initiative. But that said, I think maybe I'll turn it over to Karen. She's the main liaison between the New Hampshire program and in Maine, and perhaps can give us some advice in terms of steps to get going.
Thanks so much, Mark, and thanks to all of the presenters. It's always so great to hear from all of you, and you're already involved with Recovery Friendly Workplace in one fashion or another, so we appreciate you. I'll just say that. I'll just reiterate what Brad and Colby mentioned. We have approximately 340 businesses in New Hampshire right now that are officially designated or on their way to being designated, and we have businesses from all sizes, small, medium, and large, all sectors. So it's exactly what they were saying. It's really having an understanding of recovery, connecting people to resources and being able to do that in a compassionate, understanding, and non-judgmental way. So I wanted to reiterate that because anyone can learn how to be recovery friendly. I'll also say that where should an organization start if they're interested? I'm always happy to provide the basics of how we initially get businesses started in New Hampshire. And just like I think Brad referenced, it's a pretty simple process. Initially, phase one is you would submit a letter of interest, which is on our recoveryfriendlyworkplace.com website. And that immediately goes to the governor's office and goes to all the advisors as well as to our program directors. And at that point, an advisor is assigned to work with that business. That advisor then reaches out and meets with that business. Typically, it's leadership and HR directors or whoever the business wants to include. We welcome anyone. And we do an orientation about the program. Following that, the team that we've met with talk about, how they wish to proceed if they want to proceed. And they would then create an individualized declaration. Once that declaration is complete and once it is shared with all employees, they would then send that to me if I was their advisor. And I would then request a designation certificate from the governor's office. Now, I'm speaking about New Hampshire, but all of these things can be replicated or scalable, depending on what type of business you are, it doesn't matter. Once that happens, and I'm pleased to say that I did recently meet with the Nonantum, and so we're in that process right now. But what I would do next is then meet with that team again and talk about their level of readiness and what are their most pressing needs. Why did they want to become a recovery-friendly workplace? And that's where kind of the deeper work begins. And we would then develop a strategic plan over the next year on how that business is most comfortable, moving into that recovery space. And it can be something simple as creating resource cards and just knowing what the resources are. I like to talk a little bit about one of the things that a lot of my businesses have been working on and have excelled in is developing a process. So every company and every organization, I feel, does need a process, whether you're small, medium, or large, so that people within that company know that they can, first of all, speak openly about substance use disorder and co-occurring disorders and struggles they might be having that are related, and that they know who to go to, and that there are safe people to go to that can also connect them to the resources that they need, particularly if they need a higher level of care and they're not able to access that higher level of care. This is where peers and peers with lived experience are so important to speak with, say, at the recovery community organizations. So those are just a couple of quick examples of, how we would get a business started in New Hampshire. I'm from Maine originally. I have a real heart for Maine, and I love the work that you're doing. So if there's anything I can do to help within my role, of course, I'd be happy to do that and support all of you in your work.
Thank you, Karen. And could you please post the URL and perhaps your email in the chat?
Yep, I did that earlier. I'm going to do it again.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Jean, question from Jean.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Marvin. I also work at the Nonantum, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I am Colby's mother. But anyway, something that's been weighing on my mind a lot lately is that we're heading into the holidays. And I think that's just a really hard time for a lot of people. And I'm really worried about, we have a couple of guys that were incarcerated that now live in our staff housing. What happens to them on Thanksgiving and Christmas? Is it too weird for us to invite them like to our house? I mean, would they be totally intimidated and freaked out by that? Or, is it not our business? It's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I just thought maybe somebody here would have some suggestions about what's an appropriate response to that.
Great question, Brittany. I'm going to turn it over to you because you're in this business. And then maybe I have a comment because I've lived through that experience.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say me.
Yeah, go ahead, Brittany.
Oh, yes. I would 1000% say invite them. Invite them. Maybe hold like a little thing at the Nonantum if they live there for them. I think that's really special, and you would never be able to imagine how much that would mean to somebody. And they might say no, and they might not be interested in coming, but extend the invite if that's what you're comfortable doing. I would also suggest maybe if you'd rather not do that, but you're really concerned that they don't feel celebrated or have something to do, then do a little event for them at the Nonantum. Like do a little employee Thanksgiving for people who are going to be there on that day. I used to invite girls from the sober house, like to my family Thanksgivings and whatnot that didn't have anywhere to go, because obviously it weighs on your heart when people don't have people to celebrate with. So whatever you think feels right. I don't think that you shouldn't invite them if you're comfortable doing that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Brittany. And Jean, for somebody who, also full disclosure, I am a person in long-term recovery myself, and Pinetree Institute is a recovery-friendly workplace, officially certified and so forth. So, but my experience, I have lived in a sober living house over major holidays, and it can be one of the loneliest and saddest places to be. And so any act of kindness, and people may not react or may not accept it because there's still some sort of a, at least for my situation, I'm not worthy, or, I'm less than type of, feelings that I have in early recovery. But that act of kindness is going to blossom into some other, it's almost like paying it forward. So you can't lose by opening your arms and your heart to people in need. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Nicole, pointing out that the Portland Recovery Community Center is open and holding a full Thanksgiving dinner for anybody who can make it. So thank you, Nicole.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Just curious about how far these initiatives or services extend north into Maine, where folks are maybe even more isolated, or maybe don't have as many employers that offer, these kind of resources.
Yep. I mean, that's a great question. And Pinetree Institute and PRCC, the Portland Recovery Community Center, and the help of our New Hampshire colleagues, there are pockets of recovery-friendly workplace initiatives throughout the state. There's a great community coalition up in Acadia, taking care of Washington County. There's activity that we're involved with in Lewiston, Auburn, and Androscoggin. Mid-Coast is doing some things. So out of necessity and out of interest, the communities are actually raising the level of awareness of recovery-friendly workplaces and the talents, the untapped skills and talents of many of these people who are in recovery. It's not driven at a state level. It's driven at the community level, which is kind of the main way. However, we're going to be putting, we being the state of Maine and some of the nonprofits that are around the state of Maine are going to be putting together some best practices and approaches that can help these communities come forward and kind of stitch it all together so it kind of all looks and feels the same in this consistency of application. So that's a great question, because as we all know, there's Portland, there's Augusta, there's Bangor, there's York County, and then there's the rest of Maine. All right, so Laura, I guess I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you for participating today. As I said, we did record this. We'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel later today and sending it out, and hopefully everyone can share it far and wide so more people can receive this message. And I do know that we are planning for another session like this, follow up on some of the conversation today for early in the new year. So again, thank you all. We very much appreciate it. We want to thank our sponsors, Kennebunk Savings, the Pinetree Institute, and the Chamber for making this possible today. So have a great day, everyone.
Well done. Thank you.